Please welcome Dr. Leigh Wilson.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation to come and speak with you this morning. As it's been said, I will speak a little bit on mindfulness in daily life and how we can all apply mindfulness in a very simple way, but also in a way that we can actually think about what it is that we're doing. So today what I'll do is I'll go through the definitions of mindfulness and talk a little bit about some of the theory behind mindfulness as well. I'm also going to talk a little bit about research, and because I work at the university, I do a lot of research myself, and there is a lot of research going on into mindfulness. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Also, where mindfulness is useful and where we can actually practically apply mindfulness on a daily basis in our own lives. And then I'll go through a short exercise at the end for everybody to try. So what is mindfulness? Can anyone tell me? What do you think mindfulness might be? Anybody want to have a go? Yes? Being in the moment. How perfect. That's true. Mindfulness is actually awareness cultivated by paying attention in a sustained and a particular way. It's something that we do on purpose. It's something that we also do in the present moment. And it's something that we do non-judgmentally. And I'll talk a little bit in a moment about how mindfulness has actually sort of got a little bit off track in the modern world, and it's not really the mindfulness that Buddhist philosophy actually conceptualises mindfulness as. Meditation is a way of systematically regulating our attention and our energy. It influences and transforms the quality of our experience. It services the realisation of humanity and our relationship to the world and others. And meditation and mindfulness are not exactly the same thing, but meditation is a way of actually achieving mindfulness in the long term. And I'll talk to you about how that happens. Before we do anything else though, we're going to do a short exercise. I want you to just sit where you are comfortably, put both feet on the floor, put your hands gently on your lap, and just close your eyes. And for a moment, just think about what it is you can hear around you. You hear the buzz of the noise outside, the quietness of the air conditioning. Take a lovely deep breath and just open your eyes again. And so often we forget to take that little moment of time just to be aware of exactly where we are in this present moment. That's just one little example of how we can be mindful. So often we don't actually think about what we're doing. How many of you have driven a car, got to the place that you're going and suddenly thought, oh, I don't actually remember getting here. I don't remember going past that street sign that I usually see, or because we don't observe. We do things so often now on automatic pilot. We're so busy. We're so stressed. We're so rushed. We don't observe. We don't even taste the food we eat sometimes. We just swallow it. The little slide that I showed you a moment ago with the Smartie packet, when I teach mindfulness in the classroom on a small scale, I usually give everyone a little packet of Smarties and ask them to just taste the Smartie, just one at a time, to think about how it feels to eat a Smartie, a little bit of chocolate, a little bit of crunch. And so many times people say to me, oh, I usually just eat the whole packet. You know, if I have these little packets, I just eat the whole packet at once. And that's so often what we do. Don't just sleep, dream, don't just think, feel, and don't just exist. We need to live. It's very important. So let's think about the origins of mindfulness. Mindfulness actually is a component of the Buddhist Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path consists of right view, intention, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right effort, mindfulness, and concentration. So mindfulness is and has been for thousands of years a very important, critical component of Buddhist philosophy. The four foundations of mindfulness, which are of breath, of feelings, sensations, mind, consciousness, and mental phenomena, are what really makes mindfulness very, very different in a Buddhist sense than some of the mindfulness that we see and hear talked about today in the secular world. So mindfulness is actually a mental discipline. It's aimed at training your attention, but it's also aimed at transforming you as a person. And this is where we really need to think about how we practice mindfulness. You need to use your senses to actually train your attention. You need to engage your mind in the present moment. And this is through fostering self-control, through non-attachment to thoughts, to feelings, to sensations, to just letting things go. And that's often very, very difficult to do, particularly where we're so caught up in the things that are going on around us. So mindfulness, in its truest sense, encourages an attitude of openness and acceptance. It's about saying, this is where I am, this is what's happening, this is what I can deal with, this is it, I'm here, this is my moment. It's also about cultivating equanimity and stillness of being. We shouldn't be so reactive. How often do we hear something and we jump up, we fly, we quickly run to do something before we've even thought about it? We need to actually think about cultivating that stillness. But Buddhist mindfulness is guided by an ethical imperative, very important, which requires the practitioner to cultivate a wise and compassionate self, to actually be compassionate to other people, compassionate to yourself, and so that we care and engage others through this compassionate self. So why has mindfulness suddenly become really popular? I'm sure if you go into Dimmick's bookshop, you'll see a whole shelf. Mindfulness for dummies, mindfulness for you, how can you be mindful, how can you be this? Heaps and heaps and heaps of books. And so what's happened is that suddenly practitioners have realised that actually mindfulness does some good. So perhaps we can make some money out of it. So let's talk a little bit about how that all happened. So as I said, Buddhist mindfulness practice has been around for thousands of years. But in the 1970s, the term mindfulness was introduced into social psychology by a professor from Harvard University, and her name was Ellen Langer. Now, about the same time, Jon Kabat-Zinn, who was actually using Buddhist-based mindfulness in his psychology work to create mindfulness-based stress reduction programs for his clients, was starting to do his work. And these two things happened around about the same time in the 70s. There was a social theory of mindfulness started to develop. And Ellen Langer, in her book, which is still available, talked about mindfulness as the opposite to mindlessness. And that's quite a different concept to Buddhist mindfulness. So her concept of mindlessness was just doing something without thinking. And her concept of mindfulness was, let's make sure we think about what we're doing. So it's very different. And Langer postulated that mindfulness actually increased authenticity, made you a better person. But she also talked about women in business, and she used it in a very much a feminist way, just to promote ways that women could start to increase their role in business so that men would think better of them. Remember, we're talking about the 70s here, so women in business was actually quite a rare phenomenon in those days. So that early work by Ellen Langer at Harvard, and of course that's a very prestigious university, shaped a lot of the psychology research around mindfulness. And she actually, as I said, talked about it being a mindful, not mindless approach. But she did highlight the role of mindfulness in health, education and business, but also in the elderly population. And she talked about the fact that actually thinking about what you're doing might help multicultural issues and some of the problems that we have across countries. But she saw mindfulness more as a sense of control rather than a transformative process. And this is where they're different. If you think about mindfulness meditation and the changes that occur, so I'm looking at the green bar on this side here, and you can see that through mindfulness meditation, we have attention, control of our attention, controlling our emotions. There's also self-awareness. We become more self-aware. If you look at the pink bar, you'll see that you can do a lot of activities. You can do Tai Chi, you can do relaxation, you can do yoga, you can do meditation. It doesn't mean you become self-aware. And that's the difference. A lot of people will tell you that they meditate and they do Tai Chi and they do yoga, but they're still not very self-aware. And I'm sure you can all relate to someone that you know that might do that. So once you have the sense of self-awareness, of course, the self-regulation happens and it's integrated into your life. It can be very difficult, you know. You start off, it's a practiced skill. It doesn't just happen overnight. It takes a long time. So here is the secular conflict. A lot of people do see mindfulness as a form of self-control rather than this deep inner awareness. And unfortunately, meditation, Buddhist meditation is seen as a religious construct rather than as a way of actually being and living your life, as a philosophy for living. So a lot of people won't or don't resonate with the Buddhist construct because it's a religious construct. Many will tell you they meditate, but the definitions are very diverse. What might be meditation for one person might be very different for someone else. So there are lots of secular organisations out there teaching mindfulness and meditation. Sometimes they teach meditation to make you more psychically aware. Sometimes they sell it to say, you know, you'll be less stressed. None of those things are true Buddhist mindfulness, and none of them will necessarily make you self-aware. So that's where we need to be really careful about what it is that we're talking about. So I'm going to talk a little bit about technology, because what we do know is that as our ability to look at the brain using the technology that we've developed, we do know that mindfulness makes a huge difference to the way the brain functions. So I'll talk to you now just a little bit about that. You've probably all heard about the research called The Brain That Changes Itself. And this is how we know that mindfulness actually makes a difference to the neural pathways in the brain. So the research has demonstrated that, contrary to popular belief, because we always thought that the brain couldn't repair, couldn't regenerate, the brain can actually start to reform itself. The neurons in the brain are actually highly plastic, so we can change the way they function. A lot of the most entrenched thought patterns in people can actually be changed, and mindfulness is a way of doing this. True reflective self-awareness focused mindfulness can actually change the way you think. And this is really, it's actually been shown, and I'll show you a couple of the slides that show you how the brain does change. But by regularly practicing mindfulness, you actually develop these really strong neural pathways, which makes it easier to realise when thoughts arise that aren't probably the best thoughts, or they might be the reactive thoughts, or they might be the stressful or the anger thoughts. And if you can actually start to reprogram the way your brain thinks using mindfulness, it's much, much better once you've been actually putting these new pathways, building these new pathways. So here's a picture of a brain scan. You can see they did a scan of this gentleman's brain on the left-hand side before he started his deep mindfulness meditation. And this is when he was meditating. You can see that there's a lot more of the dark area, and it's actually quite different in the way it looks. The main frame of it all is there, of course, but there's actually quite a change in the way the neural pathways function. So this means, and it's been quite useful and well used in modern medicine, modern psychological techniques as well, but it means that existing mindsets that may hamper the way we function can actually be changed. So this process is actually being used much more now in psychological therapies in a whole range of different ways. So things like new situations, new challenges, difficulties that we face, stresses that we face, we may in fact be able to react to and deal with a lot better if you are practicing mindfulness well. So developing mindful awareness is a way of creating these new pathways which actually assist with our daily functioning. I just like this slide because I can relate to it, and I'm sure all of you can. How often are we mindful? And I think you'll all realise in today's society we are so busy. We have so many different competing activities going on in our minds every single day that we tend to think, yes, we have a full mind, that's for sure. So life is a struggle. Every day you turn on the TV or listen to the radio, we see terrible things happening around the world, natural disasters, events, man-made events as well. Everybody's rushing. And many people think, if only it were different, if only I were different, if only I had more, if only I had something else. And really, this is where we need to actually start being mindful about what it is that we are and our sense of self. So many people get on the treadmill of life. We have a physical treadmill and a mental treadmill of life. And we think the same thoughts around and around. And this sends us into a circular pattern, if you like. And we live our daily lives without thinking. Really important. Suffering, which is dukkha in Pali language, means a deep sense of dissatisfaction with the mental treadmill. And mindfulness through meditation can bring the mind to a sense of tranquility, to a sense of joy, and to a sense of awareness and insight about what it is that we actually really want and what we can really do. This just shows you what happens in the brain when we get this sense of stress, this sense of anger, or this sense of dissatisfaction with daily life. In the bottom of the brain is a little thing called the basal ganglia. It's right at the base here. And in it is the habit centre. That is the part of our brain that regulates what we do every single day. We just tend to go in, it's all a habit. So that if, for example, I'll give you an example. The other day I went into my bathroom and there on the wall in my bathroom was a funnel web spider. My instant reaction to that was, as you can imagine, mostly because I was just about to get into the shower and that's where he was. So a lot of people react very strongly to certain things. But you needn't react so strongly. So if we actually start to think about how the brain reacts, that's just something that I automatically do. It comes from the base of my brain. I reacted to that spider. However, you can actually train your brain to reduce that hijack. And that's called the amygdala hijack. Once we see something, if we're confronted with something, we get that instant response that comes straight from the base of your brain, from that little gland called the amygdala. But you can train that differently. What I did do, I was very proud to say, was just get a little container, take him off the wall, pop him back out in the garden. But we can train our brains. I guess that's the message I'm trying to get through. Often the reaction that we have, it might be to someone who's hurt us, someone who's made us angry, someone who's made us cranky at the supermarket, is just to react. But if we're really thinking about what it is that we want, we can train ourselves not to react that way. So becoming self-aware can actually stop the hijack. If we practice mindfulness, stop and think, practice new strategies, mostly practice compassion to yourself and to others, practice loving kindness, and the more you meditate and practice these mindfulness strategies, the clearer your mind will become. And if you know what your triggers are, then you know when to practice the strategies for the best effect. It is possible to measure mindfulness, and there's been lots of different scales that have been developed that actually measure how mindful someone is. And they've been doing a lot of research looking at how mindfulness actually improves people's lives, how it improves their sense of self, how it improves their health. And we know that mindfulness does improve health and it does improve productivity in the workplace. And there are lots of different therapies that are used in psychology that are based on mindfulness techniques. I won't go through all of them, there's quite a few. Mindfulness in other settings, mindfulness is now used quite a lot in business, in the health sector, in schools and education, for a whole range of different people, because it does make people actually function better. And if you're functioning at the best of your ability, then you're going to be more productive, you're going to be happier, you're going to be healthier, you're going to be a much better employee. In fact, the New South Wales Health Department in the Sydney area, the not Northern Sydney region, but in the inner city area, are actually putting in a mindfulness program for their staff. And this is, proper deep mindfulness practice for their staff, that they're training them to be more compassionate workers so that they can care for the patients in the hospitals in a more compassionate way. And really, that's a very big step for a government department. And this is happening more and more, which is really good. So mindfulness through meditation. Concentration mindfulness and meditation are different. They work together, but they are slightly different. Concentration, as I said to you before, people can do meditation but may not be self-aware. It's a way of concentrating, a way of focusing your attention and perhaps, reducing stress, causing some relaxation. It's concentrating on a centred point. Mindfulness, though, is a very delicate function which actually leads you to a clearer mind and refined sensibilities. Much, much deeper self-awareness goes along with that. It's sensitive, it notices things, it notices when things change or when the attention's gone astray. It's quite different. So there are lots of different types of meditation. It can be centering meditation, relaxation meditation where you actually sit and be aware of your body. You might have seen muscle tensing, relaxation exercises. Sometimes it's a visualization where you might have a person who's actually talking you through a meditation activity, taking you to a lovely place so that you're actually visualizing that meditation. There's stillness meditation, just being totally still in the moment, not speaking, being aware. There's walking meditation while you're eating mindfully. Tai Chi, of course, is another one. I'm just going to do a short centering exercise now. If you're comfortable, if you don't feel comfortable, that's fine, you don't have to. But again, what I'd like you to do is to just sit comfortably in your chair. Take a really lovely deep breath. Just close your eyes if you wish. And I want you now to just focus on your breathing. Feel your breath going in through your nose and out through your mouth. Just feel your shoulders relax. Just feel your head heavy on your shoulders. Let your jaw go loose. Feel your eyelids relax. Feel the muscles at the top of your head relax and go loose. Just focus on the breath. And just come back gently into the room. Open your eyes. How many of you didn't realise that your shoulders were tense, or that your jaw was clenched, or that your hands were tight? It's amazing, it's not until we stop and actually do that centering that we realise how much tension we hold in our bodies. So, considerations for daily life. What we need to know is that we need to be clear and confident of the mindfulness techniques that we use, if we are going to use them. What sort of techniques are there available? Most people start with meditation, but it's really good to do some meditation every day to start to clarify your mind. As I mentioned earlier, it takes a lot of practice. And so you need to know, when you're reading the books that you're reading, what sort of mindfulness are they actually talking about? Are you doing your meditation just to relax? Or are you wanting to do it to clarify your mind, to become more self-aware, to think about how you relate to other people, to think about transforming your life, to think about living in the moment, living for every single minute that we have. So you need to be aware of what it is that you're reading and what it is you're doing. And as I've said, research, anything with evidence behind it, is always a good way to go. But with Buddhist mindfulness, we need to be aware and understand the Buddhist practice and how Buddhist mindfulness is different than just the psychological books that you might get off the shelf. So becoming mindful. Mindfulness starts when we recognise our tendency to be on automatic pilot. That tendency that we all have to just get up and do everything the same way we did yesterday. If we have a commitment of learning how to step out of that and how to be aware of every moment, then you're on the right path. That's really what it's all about. You need to practice purposefully moving your attention around your body. And that's starting with your mind. why am I doing this? Do I really need this? And you can actually do this practice even if you go shopping. How many of us go shopping and think, oh, that's nice, I'll buy that, and then get home and think, didn't really need that. It's about building that mindfulness into everything you do, thinking about what it is and why you're doing it. And you can practice through when you're eating meditation. So when you're eating your food, taste every mouthful. Slow down how much you eat. Slow down and taste food. Give gratitude. Give gratitude for the fact that you've got lovely food in front of you. You can scan your body. Does something hurt? Does something feel different? Am I tense? Can I relax my shoulders? That will help a lot. Can I relax my hands? That will help you relax. And through routine activity, the things you do every day. I did a session for a group of construction workers at the Institute, and these were men, engineers from a big construction company, and they were really sort of keen to get going at the end of the day. And I said, I want each of you to drive home mindfully. So as you're driving home, without taking your eyes off the road, of course, notice around you. Notice the trees. Notice the flowers that are blooming. Notice the colours of the other cars. And just be observant. So noticing is actually really important. So now I'm just going to do a short loving kindness meditation. This is a meditation that I actually really like. It's only very short, but it's actually really helpful, I think, and it helps bring us back to and reminding us that in fact we need to be kind and loving and compassionate to others, but also to ourselves, because very often we beat ourselves up way too much. So I'd like you just, if you wouldn't mind, just to, again, just make yourselves comfortable. And I'm going to talk you through this, and if you just say the words after me in your mind, just say them as I go. Just a nice deep breath to start. And relax. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be free from all suffering. May I be well. May I be at peace. May I be joyful. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be free from suffering. May you be well. May you be at peace. May you be joyful. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be well. May all beings be at peace. And may all beings be joyful. Thank you. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much for your attendance and your concentration. Thank you.
So does anyone have any questions for Dr. Leigh Wilson? This is a chance for you to ask about how to apply more mindfulness in your daily lives, because she's here and today is the only chance that you're going to get to see her chat to it. And I think take this opportunity, because this is not something that we regularly hold outside of Tien Institute. So if anyone's got any questions, please put up your hand.
Thank you very much for your excellent talk. Look, I was just wondering, what's the difference between being mindful and practicing meditation. Like I've actually tried a couple of forms of meditation. I've done a transcendental meditation where you had to sort of focus on a mantra, and I've done vipassana, and you had to focus on your breathing. And it appears to me that what is the difference between those two, being mindful and the practices of focusing on your breathing or focusing on a mantra? Are they different?
No, there's very many different types of meditation.
Yeah.
All of them really designed to clarify your mind, to actually give you that sense of stillness and clarity, and to declutter your mind. So meditation is a way of becoming mindful. I think that's probably the best way to actually think about it. So the more you can still your mind and become aware of how you function, how you're actually living, you're much more likely then to do and to live a mindful existence. Yeah. Yes. So meditation is a way of becoming mindful. Yeah.
So does anyone else have any other question? Thank you, Dr. Leigh Wilson. And here's one. Like I said, this is a great opportunity because Dr. Leigh Wilson's not here very often. Make sure you do have any questions that you have, things that you may not know, things that you may always have, in your mind thinking, oh, should I be asking that kind of question about mindfulness? Because mindfulness is something very new and very old at the same time. But definitely it's something that we want to learn a little bit more about and hopefully can be applied to our life. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. My question is around the word mindfulness. So when a lot of people use, or in context I've known, it's attributed to the Buddhism. But you also talked about the clinical mindfulness. Can you sort of maybe share a little bit about the history of how, what was first, or was it all coming from the Buddhism side, or? Okay.
Well, you might miss the early part, but in the 70s, John Kabat-Zinn started to develop a mindfulness-based stress reduction program for his clients. He was a psychologist. His programs were based on Buddhist mindfulness. But at the same time, another researcher at Harvard University, Ellen Langer, started to do research on mindfulness more as a sense of control. And her psychology philosophy was not Buddhist-based. It was more about controlling your feelings and controlling your thoughts. So they were actually quite different, and somewhere along the way they've sort of blended. So there is still a lot of practitioners that say they're teaching mindfulness, but it's not actually based on Buddhist philosophy because they're not actually changing the way people live or people function. They're not changing, they're not really becoming mindful. And mindfulness in the Buddhist sense is about transformation. It's about compassion and gratitude and living life in a way that is true to Buddhist philosophy. Whereas mindfulness as a psychological term is more about relaxing and controlling. It's quite different. So you can practice meditation if you like, and you can practice if you call it mindfulness, but you may not be very self-aware at all. Yeah.
Thank you for the questions. Does anyone else have any other questions? Maybe I'll ask on behalf of the potentially audience here. So how do you think mindfulness could be applied to, say, like younger children? And what sort of benefits would it be for these younger children, or for those people who may have kids that they want to give them the chance to practice or learn a little bit more about it? How can they start as well?
Well, there are actually a number of programs, mindfulness programs, now being introduced into schools. And by teaching the children to actually clear their mind, and a lot of children nowadays too have lots of access, of course, we know, to electronic devices and things that, you know, are cluttering up their mind. By teaching children to meditate, by teaching them to be still, but by also teaching them true mindfulness where they are compassionate to others, where they care about the other children in the class. They've found that by practicing mindfulness in schools, children actually have less bullying behaviours, that they perform better at school, that they actually retain more, their memories are better, that they learn better, and they actually function much better as children. They are much more resilient children than some of the children that, you know, we know these days are actually not very resilient. So there's been a lot of work done in the UK with a program called .B, which stands for Stop, Breathe, and they're actually rolling that out across primary and high schools in the UK. And there's one starting, I believe, here called The Smiling Mind. And there is also an app that goes with that for children in schools here through the Department of Education. So that's in the process of being developed at the moment. So we know it does have quite a lot of implications for behaviour and function.
That's great. And any other questions from the floor? Because, like I said, it's a very rare opportunity that we have Dr. Leigh Wilson here. A microphone will come to you very shortly.
You mentioned an app. What's the name of the app, please?
The app is called, I'll help you out just in case, Mindfulness Check-In App. So you can actually order them from the iOS or Apple. So if you want to know what the picture looks like, I've got it on my phone, so you can check it out. This actual app itself is, you can set it for a minute or 5 minutes or a little bit longer, but I'll let you talk a little bit more about that if you want.
So the Mindful Check-In app was developed by one of the venerables at the Tien Temple, and it's wonderful. It's lovely. You can put it, as was just said, you can actually get the app from the Apple Store or from iOS. It's free to download, and you can have it on your phone. So it actually gives you the opportunity to stop each day and just have a short time, a minute, or a bit longer if you wish.
Anyone else have questions about mindfulness? Like I said, this topic is, it's very common and popular right now. Herman's going to bring the microphone over.
Yeah, just a question regarding measuring mindfulness. I think you did mention it in a couple of slides. I was just quite interested in actually how that's done and what kind of research has been done in that area.
There's quite a lot of scales. I'm not a psychologist, so I can't talk about how they work. But what they do is they measure the quality of meditation, and they also look at the people's functioning, like levels of functioning at varying degrees. So they're mostly on scales. A lot of the changes in brain activity, though, that go with those scales are now measured by things like PET scans, like those coloured scans. And they could actually measure the change in brain activity and the change in the neural pathways. So they can tell whether the brain is highly stressed, if you like, if there's a lot of activity, and then how that is actually reducing through the clarity of the mind with the stillness meditation.
Dr. Wilson, you mentioned just now that for children, it's good to introduce mindfulness to them. What would be the minimum age or the youngest time when they become receptive? Because, I mean, as we look around everywhere, in restaurants, at home or at school, a lot of children were equipped with a lot of gadgets. And it tends to overtake their mind. And if they started as early as 2 or 3, how can we sort of guide them away from those things and try to make them be aware or be mindful?
I think as soon as children are able to talk, certainly there are lots of lovely meditation books you can get for children, encouraging them to do activities, sitting with them, talking to them, what I used to call with my child, bringing them down, giving them some time, sitting down, perhaps listening to quiet music together, just teaching them about compassion and kindness for others. You can start that right from the time they can talk, they can understand. And I think some of the programs that run in schools do that as well. They teach the children to stop, to breathe, to actually focus on how they're feeling. And they do this a lot with children that have anger issues too, or children that are very frustrated or, angry. They get them to stop, to focus on how they're feeling. Why are they angry? What it is upsetting them, and bring them down. Actually, still make them still. And I think you can start that very early. Yeah.
I've actually got I've just heard from the Venerables in IBAA Chatswood. They are planning to organise a children tea meditation. So, which I believe is probably, like you said, another great way for to let the younger children learn how to practice mindfulness or meditation, but with doing something else. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this, or if there is one for adults, you can always go and inquire at the RBAA Chatswood, which is on, I think, number 4 Spring Street. And just make sure that you do go in there and check out, because there's lots of meditation classes happening as well. So does anyone else have any other questions? Actually, I do have a little bit more here. So if you want to learn more about mindfulness and maybe, in a more academic way, how can we sort of get to access these courses potentially from NTI?
Yes, so there's meditation retreats at Tien Temple, but Tien Institute, which is the higher education institute in Unanderra down near Wollongong, also run courses in mindfulness. We also have different subjects. There are degree programs running at the institute. So if anybody would like to have a look at learning more, you can look at the website for Tien Institute and both Tien Temple. And the branch temples here in Chatswood, of course.